Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a very senior and decorated Army officer from India, Lieutenant General Anil Malik. General Malik, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Garg. It's a great honor to be on the show. Every time, it's always great learning to interact, and it also inspires and brings out a lot of memories when we talk like this.
Absolutely right. General Malik is the former Director General of Discipline, Ceremonials and Welfare in the Army Headquarters in India. He's an Ati Vishish Seva Medal, and those of you who don't know it, the AVSM is given by the President of India. General Malik has served in Jammu and Kashmir and the Northeast. He's a motivational speaker. And in his own words, he's on a mission on shaping the future and supporting next generation leaders. So with that amazing kind of work experience that you have, let me start by asking you a basic question. From a young cadet to a 3-star general, what did you do right in your journey? And what were some of your learnings and challenges?
Well, thank you, Mr. Garg, for that very interesting question. To start with, I want to tell you that I was never a bright student.
Okay.
Right? I just sailed through school. As I got into the Army, I was fortunate to get into one of the oldest cavalry regiments, 8th Light Cavalry. The environment of that regiment was such that it was focused purely towards bringing up the younger generation. Right? So being in a tank regiment, I was a non-technical guy. So for me, it was a challenge to learn about the tank. But then the system that was adopted in the regiment was very simple. You were appointed a troop leader, which is the lowest that you could go. But you had to go through first becoming a driver of the tank, thereafter graduating to become the gunner, and graduating to become the operator. And it's only then you were actually physically given command of a troop. This also involved not only learning, living, and eating with the men. It also involved, you went through everything. You got the CME inspection done. And if it was a promotion examination from 1 striper to 2 striper, so from a 2 striper to a 3 striper, you went through all that. And not only that, it was also that you played with the men, you lived with the men, and you learned what they learned. So that gave you the start point.
Correct.
It gave you the confidence which a young officer actually needed. And by going through this phase, I realized that the purpose was not that I should become a better driver or I should be able to strip the engine and repair it. Okay, though I learned all that. But it was to make me understand what the job involved. Right. It made me understand that I don't have to be the best gunner in the regiment, but I should be able to differentiate and know when a job is being well done. Right. Which I thought was the basic start point of good leadership principles. Right.
Okay.
So that's how the grooming started.
Okay.
Now, like I said, I never a bright student. So when one went on courses, it was good fun. It was also the era when you went on your YOS course, you're told, don't worry about the grading, go enjoy yourself, do well, mix around with your colleagues.
Absolutely. Yes.
And yet go through the learning process.
Correct.
It was the learning process, not the grading process, which was important. Right? So that's how, so like I said, never a bright student. So I was not one of those colleagues you would come across the topper on all courses and such like things, right? But I was fortunate to the extent that the army itself, beside after the regiment, the army gave me an environment to grow. Okay. I was a tank man. So logically, all the next posting, staff, appointment should have all been in armored brigades or Ahmednagar, where our training center was. Right. But I was one of those guys who went through at least 4 staff appointments in service and all outside the corps.
Amazing.
So to start with, in a high altitude area, in a mountain brigade, a grade 1 appointment in an infantry division, of course, military operations director is a grade 2. And also as Colonel GS of a division who were deployed in the LAC, as well as looking after counterinsurgency.
Amazing.
So that gave me a complete exposure to the army. So I would say that this learning process is what made me draw a balance in life.
Fantastic.
Right.
Amazing.
The system, the environment gave me that wherewithal, and I was able to make use of it. And this is what helped me in my path.
Fantastic. So, you being very modest when you say you were very average in studies, but you made it to right to the very top. So it is certainly more than just marks that took you right to the top. So my next question to you, sir, is what, in your opinion, has been your leadership style? Because for our viewers and listeners, I would like them to understand that it is more than just hierarchical leadership that goes into leading a group of men and women.
You know something? There was a stage when you were growing, correct, right? But then you got into positions of responsibility. And that, whether you became a squadron commander or commanding officer of a unit, command of a brigade, division, command of the Armored Corps Sentence School. What was happening was that I, over a period of time, first of all, decided that all things which did not appeal to me when I was growing up is something that I will not force upon people. Right? Number 2, that the major focus of my period would be not on trying to command people, but always focus on giving them that environment to grow. Right? And that, when you talk about environment to grow, it involves giving them responsibilities. Right? Don't try to run the show for them. And we've all read, a lot of us forget it, is that give the chap the job, let him use his ingenuity.
Well said.
Right? And you will find that people produce wonders. I think even George Patton talked about it. And this is what he said.
Yes.
Right. So I focused on, one was this aspect. 2, for me, operational preparedness, which is the buzzword. And we hear it so often in the media, particularly whenever there is a change of command, whenever there's a change of environment, the hierarchy changes. The first thing the media will like to know is, what are you going to do about operational preparedness?
Correct.
Now, in my understanding of operational preparedness, implied not 1, but 3 major aspects. 1, give them the wherewithal, right? Provide them the necessary equipment, which, in my understanding, was the responsibility of the hierarchy. And 2, the responsibility of the government. Okay, they give you the resources, they make the resources available to you.
Correct.
The next thing was train them so well that they acquire the confidence when they get into the battlefield. Right? And today, when we talk of battlefield, we are not talking about day-to-day combat. But today, the army goes through this kind of environment at every stage, whether J&K, Northeast. We've seen that they are on the battlefront every morning.
Absolutely.
But so this was again a responsibility to some degree of the government, but a large degree of the hierarchy. Provide them the right training, they're equipped to take carry out their task in a particular manner.
Very interesting.
But the third, more important thing, which is very less talked about,
Mm.
is to strengthen the human.
Okay.
Right? Because in my understanding,
Mm.
the human being is the most important player who's going to make a difference.
Mm.
It is his psyche, his mindset, which is going to make a difference.
Mm.
Now, here, I feel not every leader at every stage,
Mm.
right, whether it be a troop leader or he be the chief of the army staff, it is their function to give them that confidence to be able to do something which they are required to do.
Mm.
You know, you, me, we all grew up in the same environment.
Correct.
A lot of us went through schools where somebody went on to become foreign secretary, or somebody went on to become entrepreneur or a businessman, right? Somebody did not make it to the level that he wanted to aspire for.
Absolutely.
Right. But then there was something very different for the armed forces, that having studied in the same school, having sat on the same bench with somebody, I am willing now to lay down my life.
Well said.
Right. So that level of motivation does not come from pure talks.
Mm.
I can go and give a lecture on motivation.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me enforce that man who went through the recruitment process is willing to lay down his life. But it is again the environment that you're giving. The focus that here is somebody who's going to care for me.
Mm.
My concern is that tomorrow, should the inevitable happen, for which I have been trained and which I have been has been ingrained into me, should it happen, is there somebody going to look after my parents?
Mm.
Is there somebody who's going to look after my wife? Will my children be taken care of? That environment is what you create in your military cantonments or the formation that you're leading.
Well said.
And not only the people at our thing, I think the army wives play a major role in this particular.
Correct.
A role which is very less talked about, but I think they contribute so much to it. And I can say with pride that my wife was there before me, before I knew what was happening.
Absolutely.
Right. So it firstly took me away from distractions.
Mm.
It took the officers away from the routine distraction.
Mm.
Right. And it also makes sure that the men, when they went to work, they went to field areas, they went to operational areas, they didn't have to look back over their shoulder.
Amazing. So I'd like to now move on.
Sorry to add on just one more point.
Yeah.
Normally, I mean, this should wait, but then it's come on my mind, so I want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell you about it. Is this that they are also, unfortunately, there's something which is missing, is that the nation must stand behind them. Right?
True. That goes without saying. Absolutely right. But General Malik, now moving on, you've been a senior armored corps officer. You've seen technology, and as you just mentioned, you figured out how to strip an engine and put it back together, etc. I'd like to get your perspective on what do you see as the war of the future, because suddenly it is beyond just hardware. It's now technology, it is cyberspace, it is space, outer space, and so many other things. I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Technology is a very interesting phenomenon. I think right from prehistoric days, to start with, it was innovations, right?
Right.
Graduated into technology. For example, as a tank man, the first thing I learned was navigation using stars.
Wow. Okay.
So I could make out where the North Pole is, and I could figure out where Orion's belt is. So I knew the directions that I was heading for.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Okay. So that was the basic era that you went through. Not that technology keeps coming in at every stage.
Correct.
Somebody made the sword, somebody made the shield. Technology was used even then.
Correct.
But as we went over the years, gradually we forgot about astral navigation because we got the GPS on our.
Right.
So there was a satellite which would give you your location, it would give you where you're heading.
Yeah.
Like GPS has now become commonplace.
Absolutely.
Nobody moves out of his house without a GPS, right? At the end of it, you may land up in a dead end at times, but that happens.
Absolutely right.
Right. So technology, I would say, became like a support system. You have let's take the example of the Air Force. The Air Force was initially supporting you in close support. You would tell them on the radio that target so-and-so is there in front of me, my movement is being restricted. So the Air Force would come and create gradually the Air Force started getting into interdiction and taking on targets in depth. What is the purpose? The purpose was to shape the battlefield for the ground soldier.
Well said, yeah.
So the technology now was assisting you in carrying out your missions. Okay. Now we got onto the area of drone. You can pinpoint, pick up a target. Artillery became self-propelled to start with, and then today it can strike in depth at targets, so that before you get there, a certain environment has been created, certain destruction which would have interfered with your mission has been taken care of. So again, all the technology that is happening is shaping the battlefield environment. Okay. Also, I would like to say that when we involved ourselves too much in technology, see, in the old days, you sent out an early warning man who would go with a radio set, climb a tree and look into the enemy territory and send you a message कि फलानी जगह पे दुश्मन का post है. So you could plan your movement. Today, you can see it on a computer screen. To start with, this technology filtered down to the headquarters. So the information would come to the headquarters, but to the ground soldier, it would come at a stage when sometimes it would be too late, right? Before the information came. But today, the man on the ground is able to see what's happening. So he's seeing the battlefield as if it was like on a computer game right in front of you. So technology is making a vast difference into the environment. But my take still remains. Technology will shape the battlefield for you. Technology will assist you in achieving the aim. But ultimately, it's going to be the man on the ground. Okay. His mental robustness, which is going to be the battle winning factor. And irrespective of what happens, and we've seen it in the Gulf War, we've seen it every year. The ultimate objective is going to be the responsibility of the man, the soldier on the ground.
Well said.
Technology, I will say, will always continue to support you, but
it's always an enabler.
It's always going to be, and we are so used to a terminology now and use is going to be the boots on the ground.
Absolutely right. So I'm now going to move to some other sections of our conversation. You have served on all the borders. So I'd like to talk to you about China and Pakistan. My first question is relating to China. What are some of the challenges China represents for us? And given all the things that have been happening in the last 3 years with, eyeball to eyeball armies sitting opposite one another, what is your perspective on China?
First of all, I would say that having twice been in formation, which were in direct contact and where day-to-day functioning was based on. So I I can say with confidence that there was an era which I would say there was a balance. You saw the Chinese, he would wave at you every morning. You had a thing, we've gone to the extent, okay, we would have talk to them at the post level.
Correct.
You'd send him samosas, he'll probably send you some local cuisine. And it was a very peaceful environment. We all, both at the ground level, we both understood each other's constraints. Look, these areas are disputed.
Correct.
The demarcation is not very clear, but that was not my concern at that stage. Okay, it was a concern at the political stage that at some stage we need to resolve all these things. But at the ground level, you understood each other. You would be concerned that, look, he now made a bunker. So your concern would be, okay, look, if tomorrow should something happen, then I'm not fully geared up for it. Okay. You had roads coming in there, so his rations would come by trucks and his ammunition would come by trucks, while ours would come by a mule or somebody carrying it on his back. People would go down the hillside to pick up the water, and so life was carried on that way. There would be encroachments, but the patrols would go down. So you would go and interact, look, this is my area. That guy would say, look, this is our area, right? So you had those local interactions, and then they would go back because it was part of, and we would also do patrolling in areas which were of our interest, right? So things were stable. Both India and China were very strong trade partners. Right? So the enmity, there was no enmity per se existing.
Correct.
Right? There would be errors, we would probably cross into their areas and vice versa. And these were resolved.
Yeah.
There was nothing serious happening. Right? Okay, those areas which had been occupied by them were being negotiated, they were being talked about at the political level, at the hierarchy level. But the ground level, things were perfectly normal.
Right.
Day-to-day functioning was absolutely normal. Now, over a period of time, and particularly in the last, I would say 5-6 years, things started taking a different turn altogether. That the Chinese started becoming more assertive. We saw Doklam, we saw various incidents. Of course, our confidence level post Nathula Chola was very high. That yes, okay, we are now in a position to take it off. And let me tell you, my observation is that the Indian Army never failed, even in '62. Yeah, right. There were different understandings, there were different perceptions, which may have not been able to realize your full potential. We were not mentally, physically, and operationally prepared for those things. Which today the environment is totally different. Okay. My understanding of this whole situation that has developed today is we know that the Chinese focus is on becoming a world global leader.
Correct.
Maybe our stands that have changed over the years. We had the Chinese making bases in Pakistan, ports in Sri Lanka, Myanmar. The one way of looking at it is that, oh, he's trying to encircle you. The other way of looking at it is that he's trying to make entries into the Indian Ocean.
Correct.
After all, trade routes are of today. Economy and trade is paramount factor. It is not land and thing which is of concern. It is the trade routes. So the moment the Chinese found that the Pacific areas, the things like Malacca Straits and such areas they were losing ground in those areas, and which could become a pain for them in their growth pattern and their ambition to achieve certain things.
Right.
That is when, and they found that India was now joining hands or becoming part of alliances which could interfere with this. So the net result that emerged was that they said, okay, let's assert ourselves. So this assertiveness thing and what resulted in Galwan, there's a stalemate there. Not a very good thing. The stalemate anywhere is not a good thing.
Absolutely.
This could continue for ages, for years and not make this thing. But I'm very certain one thing, that China is not going to go into any kind of altercation beyond a particular stage, because the moment you do that, they've also, this may have been a test bed. They've seen that India can react. India has strengthened itself, and it is definitely going to be detrimental to their interests in becoming a global power. So nothing more is going to happen. These things will get resolved gradually. It's going to be, but we have to continue to, we have prepared ourselves. We have militarily prepared ourselves. We brought up road. Our logistics have come up. We have troops on the ground, and our troops are fully motivated.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So we're running out of time, sir. I want to definitely talk to you about Pakistan. Unlike China, which is a world economic power, Pakistan, on the other side, is a troublesome neighbor, but it's also broke. And you just mentioned economics is very important. What are your perspectives on Pakistan?
I'll keep it very short. Right?
Okay, sure.
We are in a disturbed neighborhood. We are having problems down south, which are of concern to us. Correct. Sri Lanka is in trouble. Pakistan is in big trouble. Afghanistan is, nobody is very certain as to where things are going to go. Minor issues in Nepal and Bangladesh. So we are in a disturbed area. But Pakistan is important. Okay. We understand that as long as there is a Pakistan, there will be problems in Kashmir.
Correct.
Okay. A weak Pakistan, which can be exploited by somebody else, is not in our interest.
Right.
While our stands are very clear that we will not talk to you until terrorism is. Some of these elements may not be in their own control at the moment. Right. Sometimes you let loose a Frankenstein and then you don't know how to control it. Right?
Correct.
Today, when there has been a change of government, I think it's a very right environment that certain initiatives have to come from both sides. Okay. So we also have to give them that confidence. Yes. After all, what are they? They are looking for food. They are looking for economic aid, which they have been great trade partners. Also, a lot of export-import went on. So I think this is an opportunity that must be exploited. A new government in position, whatever be its stand, we are trying to decipher mindset, a lot of it by the media. Right? But they need somebody to give them that confidence that, look, you may be in trouble, but we are not here to sort of finish you off or such like things. Okay. So that confidence building has to carry on. That confidence, and unless you talk to somebody, you'll never know what's on his mind.
Well said. Well said.
So I think these are important things. So overtures will happen. Gradually, we will break these barriers, let the new government get that confidence that, okay, we will be given we will have a peaceful environment where we can bring back the country to where it was. The political military establishment in Pakistan themselves are not very clear of which way to go. So there will be trouble. There will be such things which will happen. But like I said, as long as Pakistan is there, Kashmir will remain
an issue.
So point. But we are well equipped to take care of that.
Well said. So I'm going to come to my last question, and this is come back to you and your mission, where you are on a mission to shape the future and support next generation leaders. Tell me about what you're doing.
Okay. The first thing, there's a point which I want to reiterate from my journey. I have always been a believer. I followed it. I made it in, I would say, a personal motto for myself. And that is something called achieving excellence with humility. Right. So I am convinced that unless you are humble, no amount of excellence that will ever be permanent. The second thing that I want to reiterate is, when I came out into Civil Street, I realized that we have a very good education system.
Absolutely.
We produce top doctors, top scientists, lawyers, bureaucrats. Everybody is doing great things. Entrepreneurs today, entrepreneurship is overtaken the United States.
Correct.
Startups and everything. But what I found was that the education system did not prepare you to face the challenges of the real world. Okay. We have and I don't blame the students or the colleges or the schools. The system is, we've created such a competitive environment. मेरे बच्चे के 99.99 number नहीं आएंगे तो he is not going to get admission in college.
Correct.
Right. So the parents also put pressure on the children. Schools have no time. You and me went to school. When we went in the morning, the first thing you spent 15-20 minutes interacting, chit-chatting with your friends. So you made great bonds, which are continuing till today. Right. Your focus was on playing games together. So you had specific time allotted for. I have very rarely. Some schools have changed now. Very few schools have a thing called a PT period.
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay. Then environment did not teach you values. It doesn't focus on values. You may call Mr. Garg one morning, come and speak to my children, give them a leadership talk, give a motivational talk, right? That's something to be ticked.
Right.
But it is not happening. Okay, you may say you studied in a Patrician Brothers school, so tumhare yahan wo morning prayer hota tha. Nobody stopped somebody else from having a prayer in Hindi or in English.
Yes.
Right? Today we want to do all this. We want to have prayers in school, yet we are not clear ke karna hai nahi karna. Okay.
Well said.
Respect for your elders. Respect for your teachers. Today, there's no contact. And unfortunately, the last 2 years have further spoiled the environment. So when I speak to people, and when I give my talk, when I say shaping the future, preparing the youth to take on the challenges of the real world. The real world challenges are quite different. And I can tell you, yesterday you had somebody to hold your hand, whether it was your mom, your teacher, or somebody. The moment you step out into this world, there's nobody going to hold your hand. It can be from a road rage to rat race. The focus is only going to be, my company is not interested in how good a human being I am. They are more interested in target me to work in.
Correct.
And last point on this particular thing is, if we do not get back to this, and I'm going to use the term get back to basics, right? What is going to happen is this causes depressions. You lose balance in life. I think young couples divorces because the wife is working from morning to night, the husband working from morning to night. They have no time for the family. They have no time to. These are all, each one is a talk by itself. But to sum it up, these are small things. So
well said.
And humility is a very important factor.
Very well said. And, on that note, Jal Malik, I just want to say, thank you so much for speaking to me. The message that has come out so loud and clear in everything that you've spoken about is strengthen the human being, whether it is when you were in the army or now when you're on your mission to shape the future by supporting next generation leaders. What also came out very, very strongly is achieving excellence through humility. And I can see your own humility, even though you have served right at the very top in some of the most, prestigious kind of roles for the army. Thank you for speaking to me about your journey, about technology, about our neighbors. And thank you for speaking to me on my podcast. Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Garg. It's actually been a very interesting thing, the dialogue and interaction. I know it evokes a lot of memories. It brings back a lot of things. Like I said, each one is like a talk by itself.
Correct.
But the aim is to convey certain messages,
Absolutely.
which I hope I have been able to put across.
Absolutely. Thank you again. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.